Si parlerà di simboli tra la geometria, tra l'altro mi ha disconnesso di nuovo dalla piattaforma Iconic. Si parlerà di linee di Nazca, numerologia sacra e crop circle. Niente, adesso mi ha disconnesso, non sto a rifare l'accesso alla piattaforma Iconic. Pazienza, non serviva. Tanto gli argomenti me li ricordo a memoria e andrei a prendere le puntate tradotte.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Secret Knowledge.
Ci siamo? È tutto a posto? Come sempre un trip questa serie. È un mondo di conoscenze, di insegnamenti, ma possiamo dire che sia un trip. Fa proprio viaggiare, è una figata. Ok, grazie.
With me, Michael Feeley. Today, I'll be talking about the creation of dimensions through geometry. But first, let us have some fun and let's do another quiz. The winner will win a 30-minute Zoom one-on-one call with me, which will hopefully be recorded at the studio. So please email your answers. And this is the quiz. Please decipher that. What does it mean? I'll just leave it on screen for a
Il quiz della settimana. Per scoprire che cosa significa. Mi ricorda il quadrato del Saturn. Però non funge allo stesso modo, nel senso che non si può leggere da tutti i sensi. O sbaglio? Lo famo questo quiz, ovviamente. Non so la risposta. Non me la sono spoilerata. Qualcuno ha la minima idea. Decifra che cosa significa. Ma c'è anche un 4. Da sinistra, terza colonna, c'è anche un 4 o sbaglio? Eh sì, perché c'è anche l'8. Non ne ho la più pallida idea. A vedersi così a primo impatto. Non ho idea. Se vi viene in mente qualcosa, scrivetelo. E ne parliamo.
I'll just leave it on screen for a couple of seconds for you to look at it and pause. I say if you can email in to the studio and then the studio staff will choose a winner and you'll be notified.
L'unica sarebbe, non so, provare a convertire lettere in numeri, numeri in lettere. Potrebbe. Ci vuole un pochino di lavoro. Anche perché se la puntata è geometria.
And we'll have the one-on-one call. So for today's episode, as I say, dimensions through geometry. So the departure point, or the first manifestation, is a dot. It is now an appearance from nothing, a manifested state, just a dot. But if that dot goes on a walk in any direction, it could become a line. It can become infinite. The line can just go on forever. So, the first dimension is now born. It is length. But in a world that has a beginning and an end, you can't have an infinite line. It has to be curtailed. So you put another dot. But that line could then try and cheat the system and go on infinitely in the other direction. So you put a third dot, which then becomes the triangle. It is the number 3, which is the key to the first dimension. We have 3 in 1, or we have 1 in 3. The triangle. So 1 in 3, or 3 in 1, becomes 4. 4 then gives us another geometric shape, which is the 2-dimensional square. Now, with the creation of the 2-dimensional square, we now have width. So width is born. So we have length and we have width. That square now becomes 4 in 1, or 1 in 4, which gives us 5. The number 5 being the key to the second dimension. Every dimension has its own key number. So if we get the square and we turn that into a 3rd-dimensional geometric shape, we get the cube. Now with the cube, we get 1 in 6, or 6 in 1, which gives us the number 7, which is the key to the 3rd dimension. So we have the key to the first dimension, we now have the key to the second dimension.
La chiave, ovviamente.
And we now have the number 7, which is the key to the 3rd dimension. That is why the number 7 is so important in the 3rd dimension. The 7 continents, the 7 chakras, the 7 worlds, the number 7 that relates to the Great Pyramid. All numbers relate to number 7 or are divisible by number 7. The secret chambers, the secret doorways, the secret sounds that open up in the Great Pyramid all relate to the number 7. It is the key to the 3rd dimension. So we get the cube. The cube is the basic form of matter, the material world. Now if I was to remove all the top 4 corners off the cube, I will be left with the tetrahedron, the pyramid. So the pyramid is hidden within the cube. Now the pyramid therefore represents divinity manifest in the 3rd dimension, but it is contained within the fabric of matter. So the pyramid relates to your divine self, your God self, your God man. Now the word God simply means the balance of self. That is why in Hebrew God is G-D, Gimel, Dalet. Gimel and Dalet must walk hand in hand. Gimel must pass the light to Dalet, the darkness, dark and light, the balance of opposites. So the word God simply means the balance of opposites. And when we become the God self, that is what it means, the balance of our opposites. When you look at a pyramid, it has 4 sides, but each side is opposite to each other. It is God within the 3rd dimension. It is the divine nature on earth, the spiritualization of matter itself. We are manifesting God on earth through the symbol of the pyramid. Now, when we open up the cube, it becomes the cross. So we have the secret indwelling place of our divine self, the cross. Now the cross relates to many things, but one of its relatives is the 2 beams of time and space. So the cube, the body, becomes the cross within time and space. So the divine self undergoes a resurrection and saves the suffering human being by first of all destroying the physical and becoming the spiritual.
E diventando. Ne approfitto ora che ho interrotto. Gimel e l'altro termine non era da tradurre perché era dall'ebraico.
But if a person only identifies with his body, he's the cube only, and he's only revealing the matter within himself. Not his divine self, not his God self, but his material self, which is Satan. Because Satan just simply is the law of matter. So anything that relates to the material world is Satan. Now, the only way that Satan can ever exist is through materialistic man. So if you need a 16th sports car or a 25th house, Satan is alive in you because you are materialistic. It is the law of matter. So Satan can only exist through materialistic man. Now, when we look at Leo, the lion, it is also symbolic of the first manifestation of God. Now, that is, in Egypt, the Sphinx of Egypt. So the Sphinx, which is also a mystery school temple,
La Sfinge.
relates to the pyramid by virtue of the fact that it relates to the first manifestation of God in the third dimensional world. So as I said, God is the balance of yourself. Now, one way you can achieve such balance is by what is known as concentration. Concentration is specific focus in a specific place. There are 3 stages of concentration: thinking, feeling, and being it. Now, when you are it, you are in the 4th dimension. So you're not thinking it, you're not feeling it, you become it. Now, when we look at words, words are not part of concentration.
Qui era come negazione.
Now, when we look at words, you are in the 4th dimension. So you're not thinking it, you're not feeling it,
Sì, giusto.
you become it. Now, when we look at words, words are not part of concentration because you cannot bring words into a singular point. A singular point is when you direct all forces and all thoughts into that single point, which is concentration. So for argument's sake, if I was to say I always manifest divinity, well then that cannot be brought to a singular point. So what you have to do is you have to concentrate on the meaning of the sentence in order to concentrate. Now, the 3rd stage of concentration, as I say, is when the observer and the observed become one. You are focused on one thing. Now, this was an ancient Egyptian initiation, where for argument's sake they would be told to sit there, sometimes for days, sometimes for weeks, just looking at a tree or something else, until eventually they were not looking at the tree, they became the tree. Instead of thinking it and feeling it, they became it. They became as one. Now, the only reason that we think is because we need to expand our knowledge. If we knew everything, then we wouldn't need to think. When you look at the dimensionless universe of thought that I've mentioned many times before, it had to think the material universe into existence because it needed to expand its own knowledge. And that became the dimensional material universe. So the 3rd stage of concentration is when the observer and the observed are one, which I have personally experienced, not intentionally, but I have. Now, the story behind that,
Non intenzionalmente, ma li ho vissuti. Comunque.
I went to visit a loved one at the Chapel of Rest, which was my maternal grandmother. And there was just myself and my maternal grandmother in the coffin in the chapel of rest. Now, at one point, I was staring at my grandmother in the coffin, probably about 3 or 4 feet away from the coffin, and then all of a sudden I became aware that I was actually looking through her eyes, looking at me, looking at her. So in other words, the observer and the observed became as one. And strangely, I was looking at me, looking at her. Now naturally, when I got back home, I was looking into what this could possibly be. How can I be looking through my grandmother's eyes, looking at me, looking at her, in the coffin? Because my awareness had shifted from one place to the other. I was engaged in the third stage of concentration, which is how you achieve your godlike state. And when I got back home, I looked into a lot of Egyptian initiations and what they call spiritual concentration.
Sì, infatti ci aveva già detto sostanzialmente la stessa cosa, concentrazione spirituale, molto molto interessante. Se avete problemi di connessione, guardatela in replica.
Which is where the observer and the observed become as one. And this is what I'd personally experienced. Now, I've always said that I do not speak about anything unless I have personally experienced just what it is that I'm talking about. So when you come to Earth as a human, you are birthed into stages 1 and 2. We think and we feel. But self-divinity is stage 3, which is unity, which is equilibrium. Because the universe is always striving for equilibrium. And the maximum potential, the actualization of the universal consciousness, is God. So God is the end, not the beginning. God is the telos, the end result, the maximum reached, which becomes equilibrium, the balance of self. As a smaller universe, as part of the fragmentation of the mental singularity, the universe of thought, we too must strive for balance and equilibrium. We must take the place of non-duality, the middle ground, the neutral, the neutrality. We must not go into any of the extreme polarities. We must not go into the darkness and stay there for any given time. We must not go on Facebook or Twitter and argue with people for 3 or 4 days at a time, because that is keeping us in the quicksand of extreme polarity. In the same way, the New Age always used to tell me, and I heard them speak to others.
Qui è da tenere all'inglese, New Age.
You must only concentrate on the light and not the dark. That is taking you into an extreme polarity, because as I've said, the word God, Gimel Dalet, is dark and light that must be unified. So you mustn't just...
Davvero, è vero, un concetto abbastanza complicato magari da comprendere, ma è vero. Diciamo che dobbiamo eliminare la dualità e abbracciare quello che è stato dal principio, cioè l'unità. Infatti ne abbiamo anche discusso per quanto riguarda il finale del primo Matrix, vi ricordate? Nel finale del primo Matrix. All'inizio abbiamo Neo che combatte, nel finale combatte contro l'antagonista principale e poi vabbè si scopre sia intelligenza artificiale che vuole prendere il posto dell'umanità, eccetera, eccetera, eccetera. Però ecco, la scena finale è molto importante che esprime lo stesso concetto, perché Neo sta combattendo contro l'agente Smith, l'antagonista, poi non arriva ad un punto, cioè nel finale, arriva ad un punto di consapevolezza e conoscenza che sta combattendo ma non sta attaccando, si sta solo difendendo e già intende dire qualcosa. Infatti poi dopo, in un modo o nell'altro, lui riesce a decodificare la Matrix per quella che è, quindi vede la Matrix per quello che è, oltre l'illusione. E lì è un po' come se lui capisse che non c'è più bisogno di combattere, infatti non stava più attaccando, si stava difendendo. E dopo svariati minuti di questa difesa senza attaccare, non continua da ecco, con quell'idea di dover combattere, anche solo difendersi, ma cosa succede per neutralizzare il nemico e vincere questa battaglia? Ci va contro e si unisce, torna a essere uno.
Stopping the light.
Quindi è come se noi non dovessimo combattere il male, l'oscurità. Okay? Bisogna tornare semplicemente all'uno ed eliminare la dualità, perché è sulla dualità che questo sistema si basa, appunto sulla polarità, polarizzarsi, non dobbiamo polarizzarci, perché se noi ci polarizziamo, diciamo bene, siamo dalla parte della luce, combattiamo la parte dell'oscurità e non è quello che bisogna fare per vincere effettivamente, ok? Perché significa anche lì legarsi a un modello materiale che si basa solo su questo piano, quando in realtà la vittoria e il cambiamento deve avvenire non solo a livello materiale su questo piano, ma anche dal lato sottile o astrale, come vogliamo, dal lato spirituale, interiore, eccetera.
You mustn't just stay in the dark. You must stay in a neutral place of equilibrium, which is a place of balance in the middle. That is how you become God on earth. That is how you become the pyramid, the tetrahedron within the fabric of matter, the cube. That is why, in ancient times, the likes of the crucifix around your neck was a symbol of being Christified, was a symbol of being Asarified.
E qui sì, crocifisso, ok? E comunque ci siamo già passati della puntata scorsa, è un po' difficile qui tradurre in italiano e intende. Allora, va fatto il parallelo Cristo, Osiride, no? Non dovrei sbagliare, riascolto, sempre per sicurezza.
Was a symbol of being Christified, was a symbol of being Asarified.
Esatto, sì. E lo dice Osarified, ok? Come per Cristo crocifisso, Osiride, osirizzato. Possiamo tradurla così l'italiano. Non esiste una vera e propria traduzione, è per farvi capire.
Within the fabric of matter, the cube. That is why, in ancient times, the likes of the crucifix around your neck was a symbol of being Christified, was a symbol of being Asarified.
Osirified, come Cristo crocifisso, Osiride, osirizzato, o come volete, traducetela come volete, non esiste in italiano. Se l'è letteralmente, diciamo, inventato come termine, per correlarlo appunto a Cristo e crocifisso.
Osiris and Christ, which is the Egyptian and the Christian balance. That is how you achieve it. It was a medal of honor. He was telling everybody else how to achieve the godlike state on earth. These days, anybody can wear a crucifix, anybody can wear any religious symbol they choose without any idea as to its origin or its original meaning. The crucifix around your neck is a badge of honor. It has been watered down to nothingness, but that is what it means. If you want to be God on earth, you have to find your balance within. In that way, the projector will project a new reality and a new world. You will become the godlike being on earth that can assist and communicate with the godlike state of the universe.
Spettacolo.
Thank you very much for watching this episode of Secret Knowledge with me, Michael Feeley, and I hope to see you again soon. You take care.
Già la prima puntata fantastica.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Secret Knowledge with me, Michael Feeley. Today I'll be talking about light code 144. But before we get into today's episode, I'll just give you the result and the answer for last week's quiz. The quiz that I sent was this, and I asked what it was.
Siamo abbastanza curiosi, E sicuramente ci saranno stati da fare calcoli, sicuramente c'erano da fare calcoli. Magari le lettere erano da trasformare in numeri e fare calcoli. Molto probabilmente. Non avevamo il tempo per farlo.
The answer is, it is the Voynich cipher, which is a mysterious book kept at Yale University in America, which is coded MS408, which is the sign for Yale University. So we have MS408, YALE, Yale, LIBRARY, Library. MS408.
Ah, è vero, effettivamente se lo leggevamo da verticale, dall'alto verso il basso, sì, si poteva già leggere Yale, che c'è la Yale University, dove è sorta la Skull and Bones, la società segreta Skull and Bones, Tesche e Ossa, lo vedete, Yale Library, si leggeva, è vero.
Yale Library, and that is the answer to last week's quiz. The studio will be in touch with the winner and we will arrange a one-on-one Zoom call with myself, which will be your time to ask any questions about any subject of an esoteric nature.
Dai, dal quiz però già ci porta delle informazioni importanti. Un libro, praticamente un libro antichissimo conservato in questa biblioteca, in questa università. Codice Linee. Poi Nietzsche si scrive. Il libro misterioso, eccetera, eccetera. Vediamo se si trova qualcosa. Voi Nietzsche. Così vi faccio vedere anche come si scrive. Manoscritto decoded. E qualcosa si trova. Bello. Manoscritto Voynich, un codice illustrato risalente al XV secolo, scritto con un sistema di scrittura che non è stato ancora decifrato. Il manoscritto più strano del mondo. Molto interessante questa roba, eh? Ne avete mai sentito parlare? Sicuramente da indagare la cosa, molto bella, molto interessante. Manoscritto Voynich, un mistero lungo più di un secolo. Sembra una sorta di calendario. Quello sembra un cane, la stella, potrebbe indicare Sirio. Cane o lupo indicano comunque Sirio. La stella più lucente. Forse qualche PDF, dice Deborah. Ho visto che qualche PDF si dovrebbe trovare in realtà. Qua ne hanno fatto un libro, manoscritto Voynich, la completa edizione del mondo sul più misterioso codice esoterico. Probabile che ci sia proprio questa scrittura, da quanto sto capendo, che non sia stata mai decifrata. Molto particolare anche le illustrazioni. Da Bologna spunta una nuova ipotesi sul misterioso manoscritto. Ci sono articoli, portano altre pagine. Ne parlò anni fa pure Giacobbo e mi pare anche Mistero. Addio santo. Direi che quelle informazioni sarebbero da scartare, però magari qualcosa in mezzo di buono c'è anche lì, eh? Non si sa che lingua sia, di che vegetazione parli, eccetera. Molto interessante. Ma a questo punto mi ricorda un codex moderno che hanno fatto, non mi ricordo bene il nome e l'autore, ma di recente hanno fatto proprio un'opera che sicuramente si baserà su questo codex antico. Di recente hanno fatto un'opera con un linguaggio inventato, con vegetazioni aliene, tutte queste cose qua. Ok, sì, sì, per dire che se l'hanno parlato in TV è cosa pubblica e conosciuta a livello abbastanza mainstream, dai. Mamma mia. Conservato presso questa libreria di Yale.
Kept at Yale University in America, which is coded MS408, which is the sign for Yale University. So we have MS408 YALE, Yale, LIBRARY, Library. MS408, Yale Library. And that is the answer to last week's quiz. The studio will be in touch with the winner and we will arrange a one-on-one Zoom call with myself, which will be your time to ask any questions about any subject of an esoteric nature. So on with today's show, Light Code 144. Again, it's going to be visual, so I'll put it on the board and I will read what's on the board just.
Il codice della luce 144. Iniziamo lo spettacolo. Andava tradotta.
In case anyone can't see it on the screen. I've said many times that the universe is mathematical, which is sacred geometric. There is frequencies which are also mathematical. So the universal language is mathematics, it is numbers. And the light code 144 is now different. I could have filled infinite boards with information just about this one number, but due to time restrictions, I've condensed it and just given a few examples.
Come i 144.000.
So let me start. When we go back to religion, the father of religion is Abraham, the Abrahamic religions, which is Abram, which when you turn the letters around becomes Brahma of Hinduism, who is the Hindu god of creation. Now in Sanskrit, Abram, Brahma, equals 144. When you go to the Greek language and you see the word theos, which gives us the word theology, which is really thinking about God, it equals 144. Of course, 144, 1 plus 4 plus 4 gives us 9, but that is for another day because that has its own significance. So when we look at the circle and we turn it into a decagon, which is 10, each corner is 144 degrees. And this is where the golden ratio appears, which is the phi ratio, which is the fabric and the mathematical coding of nature. And that is held within the decagon, which is the shape within the circle. Now the cross-section of DNA under the microscope is also this decagon.
Mamma mia. Sezione aurea, Fibonacci, il Fi, HI.
So it relates to 144 DNA.
Perché qui era decagono.
So it relates under the microscope is also this tetragon. So it relates to 144. DNA relates to light. When we get the speed of light really, it is 144,000 nautical miles per second of arc grid. So again we have 144,000, which contains the number 144, which as you will see are both deeply interrelated.
È incredibile, anche perché se lo riduciamo al minimo esoterico, no? Comunque sia, abbiamo sempre 1 più 4 più 4 più 0 più 0 più 0, quindi rimane invariato.
144, which as you will see are both deeply interrelated. On the Great Pyramid, there were once 144,000 lime casing stones, again relating to the same number. So DNA, our makeup, our internal coding, is linked to light with the harmonics of the circle, which again, the word circle gives us the word source, which gives us church, the father of religion. Now all of the degrees of the platonic solids.
Nelle puntate precedenti aveva mostrato che le prime chiese erano cerchi, e deriva da lì la parola.
Which is the third dimensional geometry, add up to 14,400, which again contains 144. Now through what is called harmonic mass, we are able to move the digital point to any place in the mathematical summation. So in this case 14.400 are the degrees of all the platonic solids added together, 144. Now 144,000 is the harmonic of 144. So 144 and 144,000 all relates to the same harmonic. Now when we look at Nikola Tesla, he once devised a car antenna which was pretty much free energy. Now the antenna was 6.944 feet. It had to be exactly that height, which is a reciprocal, or the reciprocal of 144 is 1 over 144, which equals 0.006944, which relates to Tesla's car aerial. So 144 related to Tesla and free energy. Now the Great Pyramid angle in Egypt is 51.84 degrees. Now when we do this mathematical calculation, the circle 360 over 51.84, it equals 6.94 feet, which relates again exactly to the free energy of Nikola Tesla and his car aerial. Tesla obviously spent a lot of time in Egypt. Now when we look at one of the most famous geometric patterns.
Allora, riferimento alla piramide è quel, ve lo faccio vedere da qua, parlava dell'angolo, sì, l'angolo della Great Pyramid.
Now when we look at one of the most famous geometric patterns, the flower of life. Now the flower of life has 90 petals and it has 54 triangles. 90 plus 54 is 144, that number again.
Mamma mia.
When we see the pentagram, which is really the shape of the universe, man, as the lesser universe, as the smaller universe, is also represented by the pentagram. The head, 2 arms and 2 legs, 5. So the pentagram has 2.
E 5 era il numero chiave della seconda dimensione. Il 7 è la chiave della terza dimensione.
In the degrees of 72 degrees. 2 times 72 is 144. So again, even the pentagram, one of the most famous symbols of the mysteries, and even the Pythagorean mysteries, relates to this magical number 144. Now the 12th Fibonacci number is 144, and we all know that if we do 12 times 12 it gives us 144. So that number is also encrypted
Pensa un po', 12° numero della serie di Fibonacci, 12, 12 per 12, sempre 144. 12° numero della serie di Fibonacci già è 144.
The Fibonacci sequence, which again is the fabric and the encoding of nature. Now, in the Indian system, they have a system called Kala, which means time, and it also gives us the modern day
Un sistema che si chiama Kala, K-A-L-A.
word calculate. So in Vedic, Kala, time, is calculate, and there are 144 Kala
Nel linguaggio vedico,
per second of time. So even in Vedic, ancient Vedic mysteries, they understood the significance of this number. So when we get the Pythagorean triangle of 3, 4, 5, which are found encrypted in the Great Pyramid as an aerial view, also a lot of the ancient
che fa 12,
sites around the world, including Roslin Chapel and others. When you expand Pythagoras' 3, 4, 5 triangle, we get 180, 144, 180, which equals 432, which again is the harmonic frequency
ed ecco perché è una frequenza armonica, è utilizzata come curativa in Hertz.
of the universe. Now 3 times 144, 3 sides of a triangle, 3 times 144, gives us 432. So 432, the harmonic vibration of the universe, the frequency of the universe, also relates to light code 144. The Bible tells us that creation happened in 6 days. On the 7th day, God rested. But in 6 days, there are 144 hours. So even 144 is written into the story of creation. When we look at Hermes or Mercury and the caduceus, the element of Mercury is 14.4. So again, this equation gives us light speed. When we have back-engineered UFOs that have crashed, they used the mercury element of 14.4, which gives us speed of light travel. So even extraterrestrials are encrypting this 144 number within their speed of light travel across the cosmos. Now, if we use the 10 angles of the decadon, which is what I said initially, and divide that circle into rings of 8, 8 sets of 18, which is when you do a Fibonacci spiral inside of the circle, it passes over to the solfeggio scale, which is really the 9 notes of music that all relate to the number 9. When you do this, a number sequence appears in the rings. The first one is 174. So 1 plus 7 plus 4 in digital summation gives us 12. 1 plus 2 gives us 3. The second number that appears in this ring of number is 285. So 2 plus 8 plus 5 gives us 15. 1 plus 5 is 6. The third number that appears in this ring of numbers is 369. 3 plus 6 plus 9 is 18. 1 plus 8 is 9. You may already now be able to see Tesla's 369 code, which relates to the light code 144, which relates to his car aerial, car antenna of free energy, which relates to the Great Pyramid. So it is Tesla's 369 sequence, and it relates to 18 times 8, which equals light, 144. 18 times 8 is 144, which is the light code. As we can see, that is really just a very, very short narrative of this wonderful magical number 144. As I say, I could have used infinite boards just for that one number alone in all the places that it appears encoded in our world, in our universe, in our existence and our reality. It is safe to say that there is evidence mathematically of a intellectual designer. That designer is the mental singularity. It is the
Il designer o come potremmo dire, ingegnere. Ok.
universal mind that exists in the dimensionless universe. And the dimensionless universe is light and mind. Light relating to 144. So even the creator, which is not yet God, but the universal mind, relates to light code 144. Thank you very much for watching this episode, and I will see you again next week.
Porca di quella, che puntata. Anche i coni delle torri irlandesi sono 52 gradi, no, 51, quindi 516. Mamma mia che puntata. Sono rimasta a bocca aperta. Ultimi 20 minuti. Con le ultime due magnifiche puntate. Moltissime basiliche seguono le stesse numerologie. Sì, la maggior parte, diciamo, delle cattedrali, luoghi di culto importanti e via discorrendo, seguono la sezione aurea, né più né meno. La geometria sacra, a testimoniare che certe conoscenze ce l'hanno da millenni, come dice Isaac.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Secret Knowledge with me, Michael Feeley.
È anche legato appunto all'energia libera.
Today,
Lì poi si rientra nei tori energetici, si basano sempre sulla geometria sacra.
I'll briefly talk about the mysterious
E infatti, scusatemi, poi non interrompo più, però adesso stanno lavorando al sole artificiale, Tomahawk e via discorrendo, fusione nucleare e co. E infatti utilizzano la geometria toroidale.
Nazca lines, which has been the subject to many documentaries on the History Channel, on ancient aliens.
Ok, lo facciamo ripartire dall'inizio, visto che ho interrotto 4 volte. Il mercurio ha il suo perché, e lì mi fa venire in mente anche le vaccinazioni dalla nascita. Il mercurio ha il suo perché, sì, anche per quello, direi.
Really. Today, I'll briefly talk about the mysterious Nazca lines, which has been the subject to many.
Bellissima questa traduzione, le misteriose linee nascali del naso, sono le linee del naso, parleremo delle linee del naso, sicuramente, linee di Nazca.
Documentaries on the History Channel, on ancient aliens, it even forms a lot of Eric von Daniken's work. So what are the Nazca lines? Unfortunately, I don't have much artistic quality, so I can't actually draw them for you, but I have my trusted assistant, my little board. So what I'll do is I'll go through just some of the pictorials that are on the landscape in Peru, and then I'll tell you what they relate to, and at the end I will sum it all up. So the Nazca lines, these curious and mysterious insects and animals.
Le linee di Nazca, virgola, togliete a linea.
Spacemen and men, actually on the landscape, put that in ancient times. What do they mean and what are they? I needed to get a couple of grids, and I had to superimpose the grids at a certain diagonal, and I had to place those grids over the pictures of the Nazca lines in order to work out what they mean. So let me go through them individually. We have the spider, the famous spider, which relates to Orion, the constellation Orion.
Orione.
We have the monkey, which actually relates to the Monkey Head Nebula, again, of the constellation Orion. We have the now famous hummingbird, which most people will use
Sempre Orione.
when they highlight the Nazca lines. The hummingbird relates to the nebula of Cepheus. Now by now you may begin to realise that everyone refers to the stars. We have the lizard, which refers to Lacerta, which again is a constellation.
Allora, i termini giusti li abbiamo sulla lavagna. Non si leggerà benissimo, soprattutto per voi. Lizard, ok, lucertola. Lizard abbiamo la certa, ok, la certa, la costellazione. E prima, con il colibrì, nebulosa di... non riesco a dirvi bene come si scrive. Cofeus, una roba simile. Ora lo risentirete. Come si scrive bene non si legge.
Relates to the nebula of Cepheus. Now by now you may begin to realise that everyone refers to the stars. We have the lizard, which refers to Lacerta, which again is a constellation. We have the fish, which relates to Pisces Austrinus, which is the southern fish. All of it is in the sky.
No, non capisco se ha detto il settimo pesce. Non lo ha riscritto nella lavagna, direi di no. Pisces sinus, quello che è.
Which relates to Pisces Austrinus, which is the southern fish.
Dice seven fish, settimo pesce.
All of it is in the sky. We have the condor, which relates to the Condor Galaxy, which is the largest spiral galaxy in our universe. Then we have the heron, which is the Grus constellation. Then you'll
La costellazione Grus.
see a dog. They have put a dog on the landscape in Peru. But the dog is Sirius, the dog star.
E come vi avevo già detto quando siamo passati da quel codex, che mi pareva un cane, il lupo, infatti lo dice anche lui, ormai cosa che conosciamo bene, rappresenta Sirio.
Which is accompanied by a constellation called Puppis, which is next to the dog star. So we have
Neanche farla apposta, abbiamo una costellazione vicina chiamata Puppis, che richiama comunque il cane.
a dog and his puppies. Again, that is in the sky.
Ah sì, Puppis come cuccioli, esattamente.
And then one that is not widely known, but that is actually a cat. Now that cat is Felis, or Felis,
Felis.
which again is a constellation in the sky. Then they've put a whale. The whale is the Cetus constellation. All of them.
Questa è Cetus, si scrive, che poi si pronuncia Citus, ma è Cetus.
Are stars and constellations. Then we have the man itself. The man relates to the hunter, again Orion, as does the spider, as does the monkey of the Nazca lines. Then they've put flowers
delle linee,
and trees, again, as glyphs on the landscape. That relates to the Antares constellation. Now, the famous landing strip that goes through the mountains, that is exactly what it is. It's an airport. And it goes through the mountains because there are beings in the mountains that are working secretly and sending forth higher forces and frequencies into the atmosphere of Earth in what is known as spiritual waves. Now, I've seen many documentaries where people have recorded craft going into and coming out of mountains, and that is because they are secretly working there, emitting higher vibrational frequencies into the atmosphere. Now, one of the pictures that you can actually see vertical on a rock face is the spaceman. Now, the spaceman is there because that's exactly who the messages relate to. They are communicating with those from the stars. Now, all the monoliths and monoliths around the world, as
tutti monoliti,
I have stated, are not only a star map,
come Stonehenge,
but they're also a navigational system. For instance, the mathematics of the Great Pyramid tell you how to find the five-sided pyramid on Mars, in Cydonia, for instance. The famous face on Mars, mathematically, in its longitude and latitude coordinates, tells you how to find Stonehenge precisely.
il viso, la faccia su Marte.
Stonehenge, in its mathematics, longitude and latitude, tells you how to find the face on Mars.
Anche qui, la faccia.
I already said on a previous episode that the face on Mars represents Sol 1, which is one star of a solar trinity.
Rappresenta, lo riscolto, Soul One, mi pare che abbia detto.
Sol 1, which is one star.
Sì, che rappresenta l'anima. Soul One sarebbe anima 1, ma potrebbe identificarsi proprio come l'anima.
Of a solar trinity. It is saying that there is a race of your likeness in this location. So it is a gigantic star map, but it is also a gigantic navigational system. So the spaceman is really who the messages are for. We also have a spiral, and we see the same spiral in many places around the world in ancient times, on caves, on rocks, again in the ground. So what does the spiral represent? It is our galactic centre, and we are returning back to unity. We are returning back to the galactic centre because our Earth is heading towards the galactic centre, which is where you find
Togliete word.
a supermassive black hole. Now, I now have mathematical and scientific proof that this black hole is what is keeping our reality as a dream. Our reality is a dream state coming from the singular mental mind of the universe. And as I say, I now have mathematical and scientific proof that this is the case, using neural science of the human brain, which is just a smaller version of the universal brain, the universal mind. That proof I will discuss in the coming episodes. So the Earth is heading towards a higher place, into a five-dimensional vibration, which is Sagittarius A, which is our galactic centre, a giant black hole. So it's taken us to this five-dimensional place, and the fifth dimension is in what is known as the dimensionless universe of mind and thought and light. It is also emitting 262 hertz, which again I will go into in future episodes, but it really is significant. So what we have
262 fa sempre 9.
is a gigantic star map in pictorial form, where all the insects, all the animals, all
No, 10.
the spacemen and all the human men are really mapping a star map. And they're doing it because these images, these insects, these plants, these animals, these men, these spacemen, all relate to a star system, a constellation, or an individual star.
10 che poi si riferisce all'1.
So there you are, the Nazca lines are a star map, and they're all pointing towards Sagittarius A, the galactic centre of our galaxy. So our solar system goes around the galactic centre every 25,920 years, which is called the precession of the equinox. It is biblical judgment day. It is Atlantis, because our galaxy is known as the island universe. So Atlantis is really in the sky, because our galaxy is known as the island universe.
Come no, Irlanda di no, land come la terra.
Because our galaxy is known as the island universe.
Island diventa isola, l'isola dell'universo.
So Atlantis is really in the sky, in the cosmic sea. And during the precession of the equinox years, there will be 7 different pole changes, pole star changes. They are the 7
Spostamenti dei poli.
islands of Atlantis. And when we change from one pole to the next, the previous one is said to have sunk into the cosmic waters. After the 7th was changed, the 7 islands of Atlantis have sunk. So there you go, that is the Nazca lines, that is their meanings, in a brief nutshell. So thank you very much for watching this episode of Secret Knowledge with me, Michael Feeley, and I'll see you again next time.
Ultima puntata per questa sera, così concludiamo puntuali, mancano 13 minuti.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Secret Knowledge with me, Michael Feeley. Today I'm going to be talking about crop circles, even though only briefly. But first of all, there's a little story. A number of years ago, as a birthday gift, I was taken to Wiltshire, Avebury, which is where 99% of crop circle activity happens. And it was set up that we were to be met by a guide and to be taken to newly formed crop circles. So about a week before we were set to go, we were contacted by the guide that said that he'd also been contacted by the BBC and that they wanted to film a documentary about crop circles, and it just so happened and coincided to be on the same day. And he asked if we would mind if he could obviously take us and the BBC crew around to film the documentary. Of course, we didn't mind, and this was to be my first ever experience of documentary making. Now, the host of that show was Danny Dyer, British actor Danny Dyer. So we arrived, we met the guide, we met the film crew, and we met Danny Dyer. And we spent the day going around the crop circles. I was in the vehicle with him, just watching the actual documentary being made. And after the film crew had gone, which was after most of the day, I went inside a newly formed crop circle myself. Now, bearing in mind that it was a cold, crisp day, it was windy, and there was rain in the wind. So the water was splashing on my face, however gently. But as I went into a newly formed crop circle, there was a warmth, a heat, sort of electromagnetic thermal energy. I could also feel a static buzz. There's some kind of pulsation, some kind of energy coming from the crop circle itself, because they are bent and they are formed by microwave energy. At that point, our guide said, I know a professor whose name Michael Glickman, who's fortunately passed away now. Would you like to come to his house and have a chat to him? This particular professor has been looking into the crop circle phenomena for about 25 years and is quite established in the field, and he's written many books about the subject. So I agreed to go and spent the next several hours, just me and the professor sitting in his living room talking about things. It reminded me of a scene from the film The Day the Earth Stood Still, when you have an extraterrestrial being speaking to a human doing mathematical equations. It really was reminiscent of that scene. Now, this professor, at the end of our conversation, told me that he was from Alpha Centauri and that he came here to help humans.
Oddio. Quindi a un certo punto rivela che proviene da Alpha Centauri.
And that he came here to help humans and humanity in the field of science. Now, I know this to be true because I've had these encounters before, and I deal with those in spirit who were these individuals who had also come to help humanity. So it was quite a profound experience, and the first time that I'd actually been speaking to a professor on a professor's level about crop circles, about spiritual things, about science, about mathematics. So that really is the story of the crop circles. It was my first introduction to documentary making. It was the first time I'd actually been present at a crop circle. Incidentally, it was the same time that a police officer was driving past a crop circle and he saw what he believed to be a couple of men in white overalls. And as he approached them, they shot off with superhuman speed, so fast that no one could keep up with them. Now, this to me would appear to be other races who are also trying to
Altre razze.
translate the messages.
Altre razze che stanno cercando di decifrare i messaggi. E lì, non so, erano tipo vestiti di bianco.
Overalls. And as he approached them, they shot off with superhuman speed, so
Scomparvero.
fast that no one could keep up with them.
Si spostarono.
Now, this to me would appear to be other races who are also trying to translate the messages. A couple of years ago, I took a group to Stonehenge, which again is the same region of crop circles. And I told the group that I knew that there were sonic messages inside crop circles. And they asked me, do you know what they are? Do you know what they mean? And at that particular time I said no, but at some point I will work it out. And now I have. I've worked out a sonic message, a diatonic ratio message within every crop circle, and I will translate that message in just a moment. So these crop circles, they appear obviously in crops, but they also appear on snow and in other places. Some people lay claim to having put them there, and of course sometimes that's correct. Some of those people who make those claims have also said that they were guided in a trance-like state to create certain shapes. I once saw a post on social media where someone had put a picture of a crop circle and said that I'd created it with a plank of wood. And I said to them, can you explain to me how you encrypted the diatonic ratios? And they got back saying, what do you mean? And I knew at that point that they hadn't actually done the crop circle, because there are diatonic ratios, which are sonic messages. What happens is when you have two sound waves together, you can actually impregnate words and sentences inside those sound waves, and they can be retrieved. Now, the famous composer Mozart was one such person who used to encrypt messages
La Madonna.
inside the sound waves of his symphonies that were sent to his family to decipher. So it is not a new phenomenon. Now, when I have heard the sounds of the rings of the planet Saturn, and I'll get into that in just a moment, and I've heard the sounds coming from crop circles, the sound and the pitch is an exact match.
Sì, è vero. Anche quando avevamo fatto le ricerche su Saturno, mi pare di averlo accennato brevemente anche solo con articoli, sovraimpressione, ma è possibile ascoltare il suono di Saturno se lo cercate. Sì, comunque questa sera una puntata più bella dell'altra, dalla prima, l'ultima che è questa qui, una più bella dell'altra. Soprattutto la seconda mi ha lasciato a bocca aperta. Guardatela tutta la serie, recuperatela in replica se vi siete persi qualcosa anche per questa sera.
So it is my proposal that the rings of Saturn are being used, such as the strings of an instrument, to transmit and pulsate messages.
Per trasmettere e pulsare messaggi. E questo si lega perfettamente con la teoria di David Icke di questa matrice lunare saturnina, cioè che questi pianeti, che poi si apre un vasto argomento su cosa siano in realtà. Infatti anche ha fatto un episodio Michael Feeley, l'abbiamo visto nelle puntate precedenti, su cosa possa essere la Luna. E lì sono completamente in linea. Quindi dei manipolatori artificiali, in realtà.
Now, every sound has a shape and every shape is a sound. So the beautiful geometry of a crop circle, and even that of a snowflake, is really frozen sound. Now, the sounds of the rings of Saturn can reach Earth in less than 90 minutes. So it is quite conceivable and quite possible. So now again, just before I give you the message that I found inside crop circles, I'll go a little bit into the geometry and what I'm talking about. So crop circles are really sound. They are geometric patterns.
Sono in realtà suoni.
So crop circles are really sound. They are geometric patterns. And they all contain diatonic scale messages. Now the diatonic scale are the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, B. And then we go back to C again.
Ok, lo vedete in alto.
We go back to C again. So there are 7 notes. Now I've said in a previous episode that the number 7 is the key to the third dimension. So 7 notes are being used in order to send a message. Now I'm going to go to mathematics. When we look at the symbol for phi, if we turn it
Il simbolo del della sezione aurea.
horizontal, we get the symbol for Saturn.
Oddio, è vero.
Now the rings of Saturn are the ratio of mathematics.
Vedete?
Phi, 1.618.
Del phi.
So if we get pi, which is the circle, and we put a line through the circle,
Che è il simbolo del phi, la sezione aurea.
through the circle, because phi is the ratio of a line, we get the symbol of phi. So we have pi and phi in one symbol. It is a unification, a unification of phi.
No, ma è assurdo. L'unify, no? In inglese. Unificazione. Unificazione. Unify. Unificare. Robe da pazzi.
And we put a line through the circle, because phi is the ratio of a line, we get the symbol of phi. So we have pi and phi in one symbol. It is a unification, a unification of phi. Now, because we have 0 and 1, pi and phi, 0 plus 1 becomes the start of the Fibonacci sequence. So 0, 1 and 1, the 1 and 1 is 2, 2 plus 1 is 3, etc., etc. So you get the Fibonacci, which is...
Quindi per 0 e 1 ha scomposto praticamente il simbolo del Fi. Ok, lo vedete dalla lavagna per chiarezza, il perché adesso ho utilizzato lo 0 e l'1, ma perché sono i simboli che rappresentano il Fi praticamente. Il Fi, vabbè, l'inglese poi lo dicono Fi.
etc., etc. So you get the Fibonacci, which is the creation of nature. That is within phi, that is within pi, that is within the Fibonacci sequence. It also begins binary code, which is advanced mathematics. So how does phi, which relates to the rings of Saturn and nature, relate to sound?
Come fa il Fi e il Fi e non il fuoco?
In what is known as the golden mean tone. So in other words, the golden mean tone, which operates on the 11th octave, is how phi and sound and the musical tones and the musical interviews all come into geometry and shapes. So as I've said, the rings of Saturn, which are the ratio of phi, are transmitting these sounds
Il rapporto di Fi, di Fi,
that have a message, and those sounds are creating specific shapes. Now, because every
come la cimatica che il suono va a creare la propria forma.
crop circle has the same diatonic frequencies, the same diatonic scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, I was able to say that every crop circle contains the same message from the stars. So let me now tell you that message. The message in all crop circles reads, he can have a reward, which upon further investigation revealed to me that that means he can have the rectification of the soul in order to receive God's light. Or ascension upon further investigation. That means if he looks up to see, if he looks up at the stars, the celestial narrative, where all of the monuments and monoliths and the likes of the Nazca lines that I previously mentioned are referring to. So he can have reward, rectification of the soul, in order to receive God's light, or he can have ascension if he looks up to see, by the transformation of past into future. In other words, the transmutation, the resurrection, the rebirth, a spiritual rebirth of himself. Bear in mind that every single holy writ, every single mystical writing, holy scripture, monolith and monument for the world are all referring to thyself. Or by crown, which is the coming of the Messiah, which again is your own Christ, your own balance, your own transmutation. And can have a greatness in the house, which is really referring to the noble family in the stars. The star family, who I know because I've been told, are awaiting humanity to become more advanced. They are waiting for our return. So every crop circle has this message. It can have reward or ascension by the transformation of past into future, or by crown and have greatness in the house, the zodiac house in the stars.
Zodiacale.
That is the message that I've deciphered, that I said that I would. There are many messages around the world from cosmic places, from higher advanced races. But we are not listening. We're either not listening or we're not deciphering their messages. This is what they are telling us. We've become separated from the galactic community. They are attempting, in many ways, to communicate that fact. They are trying to encourage us to rebirth ourselves, to resurrect ourselves, to become more advanced, to become less primitive, to become less violent, so that we can be allowed back in to the cosmic community. That is what crop circles are trying to tell us. And I have deciphered their message for anybody who wishes to listen. Thank you once again for watching this episode of Secret Knowledge with me, Michael Feeley, and I will see you again next time.
Mamma mia. Questa sera 2 parole e basta, mamma mia. Veramente una roba fuori dal mondo, la serie, la conoscenza di Michael Feeley. Veramente tanta roba. Sbalordito, cioè siamo alla puntata 24, questa sera abbiamo visto la puntata 21, 22, 23, 24. Siamo più o meno nel mezzo della sua serie che sta continuando, piano piano vengono aggiunte nuove puntate e come avevamo previsto dall'inizio, più entriamo nel vivo della serie più diventa una figata. Cioè, ma è una cosa, ma non mi aspettavo neanche a questi livelli, ma vi dico sinceramente, neanche minimamente mi aspettavo di arrivare a questi livelli. Porca di quella. Poi questa sera ce ne sono state puntate straordinarie. Quelle di questa sera mi sono piaciute particolarmente. Sì, mi ricorda molto il codex recente che hanno fatto. Mi ricorda moltissimo il codex recente che hanno fatto, con una lingua inventata, presumibilmente inventata, esseri viventi alieni. No, sì, ho visto che avete scritto qualcosa prima. Poi c'è un articolo del giornale che dice decifrato il manoscritto Voynich, tra parentesi forse, sarebbe pieno di formule erboristiche. È italiano? Qua dice il mistero italiano medievale ancora indecifrato. È italiano? Si sa che è italiano? Quello di Bologna è questo qua. Appunto una nuova ipotesi. Bologna anno 2015. Considerato il manoscritto più misterioso. Dagli inizi del Novecento fioccano ipotesi. Una nuova teoria che lega il libro indecifrabile all'Italia. Puglia. Il libro faceva parte della Biblioteca Generale dei Gesuiti, alfabeto sconosciuto, illustrazioni dettagliate di un centinaio di piante inesistenti o mai rinvenute, pagine con cerchi esoterici, e alla fine fu bollato come un falso questo libro. Non sono fermate le ricerche, questo è un articolo 2015, invece quello dove ci dice forse l'abbiamo decifrato 2019, uno studio sostiene di aver craccato un'incomprensibile lingua criptica, sarebbe pieno di formule erboristiche. Vedete? Testo catalogato come MS408 che è stato inserito nel quiz di Michael Feeley. Per smentire la teoria che fosse un falso, hanno fatto degli studi, no, con il carbonio, test al carbonio, 14, e hanno dimostrato che va datato attorno alla metà del XV secolo, magari è ancora più antico. Anche Leonardo da Vinci è stato tirato in mezzo, comunque, cioè, per un testo così antico, così articolato, sia per le rappresentazioni che tutto, fare un'opera così a quei tempi non trova il senso di fare un falso, creare un falso con una lingua che non esiste, cioè non avrebbe alcun senso. Ma sembra contenere anche diversi calendari, cicli, cioè questa paginata qua sembra il ciclo lunare o solare. Va bene, famiglia, io chiuderei qui. È stata un'altra meravigliosa serata insieme. Ci vediamo domani sera, mi raccomando. Intanto vi auguro una buona notte, vi mando un mega abbraccione, come sempre grazie di tutto, infinitamente. Un abbraccione domani, buonanotte famiglia, passa e chiudo.